With Brent Dukes at Mueller Water Products. As Cecily mentioned, Brent is here to chat with us about Automox, how Automox is contributing to building a lean and world-class IT organization. I am Grace Rogers, a Senior Customer Success Manager over here at Automox, and I have the opportunity to work with customers like Brent and his amazing team to ensure they are successfully maximizing the Automox product. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to you, Brent, to introduce yourself to the group and tell us a little bit about Mueller Water Products.
Sure. So yes, I'm Brent Dukes, the Director of Information Security at Mueller Water Products. I've been with the company for just shy of 19 years now. So it's been quite the career at Mueller. I haven't always been a part of the IT organization. I have been pretty much every type of engineer we have here at some point, software engineer, firmware, systems engineer, but made the move into the IT organization about 5 years ago to start our information security department as the business realized that we had a need for a dedicated team to handle security for the org. So we are, we're not just a tech business, we are a manufacturing business. We're probably the largest manufacturer of hydrants, pipe fittings, and valves in the United States. And what I like to tell people is that if you live in a city or town where you have fire hydrants, if you go outside and take a look at them, there's about a 50% chance that your fire hydrants say Mueller on them, and we're manufactured in Albertville, Alabama. We have about a 50% market share, so that's why I always say 50% chance, but it could be one of our competitors. But we also, in addition to manufacturing, we also have a technology division where we do things like wireless meter reading and underground acoustic leak detection and pipe condition assessment. So, you know, a wide variety of different types of employees and different types of work that gets done here, from your typical office work to all different types of engineering, tech business, and then our manufacturing, which poses some interesting challenges for security in itself.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's really cool that there is a 50% chance plus that we could all be seeing Mueller fire hydrants all around.
Yes, yeah, go take a look.
Yeah,
take a look. Whenever I'm traveling, I always take pictures of fire hydrants, which the passerbys think is a little strange, but it's because it's ours. So I have a collection of them. And I guess the thing to add to that is, you know, prior to my joining the IT org here, the IT org was a little bit disjointed. And I had seen that from the whole other side working in the engineering department. But there's been some leadership changes since I moved over to IT. And it was a quite controversial statement. But at our very first all hands, when I got up to present what my team was going to start working on and the challenges that we had in this business, I told the whole IT organization that we were not a world-class IT org. And I think that ruffled a few feathers with some people. But the good thing that came out of that is that the acceptance, the self-acceptance from everybody in the org that, hey, you know, there's a lot of improvement that we could be doing here. We're not world class, and the entire organization has really taken that to heart. And we're now following kind of the framework laid out by this book, World Class IT by Peter High, where it has 5 major pillars of a world-class IT organization. And, you know, one of them is maintaining a robust infrastructure, which I think that, you know, Automox has definitely helped us with some of the subcategories of that pillar. But then, you know, it also frees up our time to work on some of the other pillars, which are like maintaining customer relationships and maintaining relationships with external companies and things like that. So by not only doing the work, but also giving us time to do all the other things, it's really taken us a long way. And that's something that we're really dedicated to within our IT org here. Our IT org, I think, is pretty lean for a company of our size. The entire IT org is about 50 people. And my security department, including myself, is 5. So we've got 5 people doing security for an organization that has 3,500 employees, which I think is a lot of work.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love how this book has helped you guys really align with just not only your day-to-day with other vendors, but specifically with Automox. I mean, it sounds like it's really helped you all figure out your time and allot it where it's needed, especially with a smaller team. I think that's so important.
Mhm. Yeah, it certainly has been. And that's why I'm happy to be here today and talk to you.
Awesome. And can you think of like a specific example of how you've been able to leverage the book to align with what you're doing with your team in Automox?
Yeah. When I first joined the IT org, I think that one of the major problems that we had in this organization was outdated and unpatchable operating systems around the org. Mostly Windows, but some Linux. We've in the past few years we've had a lot of teams adopting Macs as well, right? As I'm sure many others have had the same problem. Um, so, getting those systems updated so that they can be patched, for me, security patching is the most critical, but of course, all the other maintenance patches that come along with that, was really the first major huge problem that I had, in this role. And the tool has helped. We'll probably talk a lot about that today, but helping us identify all of the systems that do have an older version of operating system, like Windows XP or even Windows 7. We're trying to get everybody up to the latest Windows 11. That's kind of the number one problem that we've been solving here.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's awesome. And being able to, find a simple way to organize those patches, I think is so huge.
Mhm.
Landing into Automox, at what point did you realize something had to change? Can you provide a little bit of insight into that?
Yeah, like I said, when I first joined this org, looking at all the systems around the company, the outdated operating systems, that absolutely had to change. As a security practitioner, I can't keep Windows XP secure anymore. Microsoft has stopped patching it, although I believe they made an exception or two for some major critical issues along the way. But that was number one. And then what I found over the years is we also get audited somewhat frequently by some of the major software vendors, and they want to know their product, how many machines is installed on, and they want evidence of that. And the auditors that we've worked with, their way of collecting that is to give us a list of hundreds of machines and say, we need you to go in to add remove programs on every single one of these and take screenshots. And that is just not something that scales to the size of our IT org, right? We don't have time to do that. But that's another problem that Automox has helped us solve, because we get a list of third-party software where we're able to do that fairly quickly, instead of spending potentially weeks taking screenshots on all these machines, right? So those were some of the first major things that happened to me in this role, coming into IT for the first time. I've been an engineer for my whole career, and all of a sudden I'm in this IT leadership position. There were some things I didn't expect, for sure, and those were a couple of them. So
Yeah, that's awesome. So could you tell the group a little bit about now why you all have been a customer since 2019, right? So why do you continue to work with Automox? Obviously, you've named off a few reasons, but what would you say are those, top points of, continuing a relationship with us?
yeah, I think that there's been a number of challenges and smaller problems that we've solved along the way. I know I'm foreshadowing something we're going to talk about shortly, but the tool has been easy to use. It provides us with the data that we need, and quite frankly, we've also looked at other solutions, and the price to features benefits are really there for us. I think that Automox has been, like, for what we're getting and what we're paying for, it's kind of really does really well stacked up against the competition. So that's why we've stayed with you. And we have a monthly meeting, Grace, where you keep up with my team, and we post to you any challenges that we're having. You have technical experts that come in and will help us. So the support has been great. So I'm very happy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love to hear that. So I know you were foreshadowing to this, and this is something I'm actually really excited for the group to hear about. But How has Automox aided you in overcoming challenges you've had before? I know there's a specific one that you're going to share.
Right. Yeah. So it was the holiday season in 2021. So it was less than 2 years ago at this point. And it was right before the holidays. Everybody's going on vacation, and there was a major vulnerability found in a Java library for logging called Log4j. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this one. And this was something that was critical that needed to be patched right away. And we didn't even really have a good inventory of who had this specific library on their computer, what software components were using it. This is something, that we didn't have inventoried for sure, because it was just one little library for Java. And to make matters worse, the first vulnerability was found, and then I think in the subsequent days, there were more. So there was like 3 or 4 patches that all came out within 1 to 2 weeks that potentially had to be applied, right? So I know a lot of my colleagues in the InfoSec industry were really whining about how much they had to work over these 2 weeks right around the holidays, and people were skipping their vacations and working over their vacations. But we were able to use a worklet within Automox to quickly identify and inventory every machine, whether they be workstations or servers that had this library deployed. And I think the initial patch was just a change of the configuration file for that library. So we were able to kind of deploy a patch for that, so that we didn't have to worry. And I believe everybody got to keep their vacation days and didn't have to work over their vacation. So that was huge for us. That's like the most striking memory I have, really, for Automox saving us, for sure.
Yeah, that's so amazing. And I think it also is just a really great story to tell of how worklets are able to quickly identify, what's going on in the environment and quickly remediate. So that's amazing. I think that's a great story to tell. So kind of getting into a little bit more, what impact has Automox has on our teams day to day, right? So we've talked a lot about high level, some of those more critical incidents, but in terms of just what that day to day looks like, I'd love for you to share, what that looks like for your team.
Yeah, so my team primarily uses a SIM or SIEM, I've heard it pronounced both ways, called Splunk, which kind of provides us our dashboards of what's going on in the business, security-wise, what's critical that needs to be looked at today. Because we're a small team, we all wear many hats, so we don't necessarily have just one person that's focused on patch management, although we do have a primary, but kind of everybody has to help out, right? Or incident response, or any of the couple dozen other niches of information security. So we do have one Splunk as our dashboard to kind of help us focus in on what needs to be attended to on a day-to-day basis. So we're using the Splunk integration. I think that there's an app in Splunk for Automox that I believe it actually, you could tell me better than I can probably, but it uses the built-in APIs. You put in your API key for Automox, and it pulls all the data, and you can set your interval, whether you want hourly or daily, for the different metrics and things like that. So we're leveraging that to kind of help us with our day-to-day, to see, especially on everybody calls it Patch Tuesday, right? When Microsoft comes out with their critical updates and things like that, especially on Tuesdays, okay, we need to deploy, make sure that patches are getting deployed. And then honestly, like, it's mostly automated. So we don't have to necessarily do that much to it, but we can kind of monitor it and make sure that everything is happening as it's supposed to, or if there's anything manual that has to be done, we can see that there. For sure.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And, the Splunk integration, I think, is huge as well for people who don't have access to Automox, right? And the dashboard does give such a great single pane of glass for those who are logging in, right? And the reporting, but for, those who don't have user access to Automox, to be able to see this reporting of what's happening in Automox, pull over to Splunk, I think is really great.
Yeah, the other thing I can mention is third-party software management. We've been talking about operating systems and mostly focused on Windows, but I am a huge fan that we use one tool to manage our Macs and our Linux servers, and the occasional engineer that runs Linux on their desktop as well. And I used to be one of them, so no, I'm not making fun of anybody for that, because that's me. But third-party software is a big issue too. We want to make sure that's getting updated, especially when the pandemic hit. All of a sudden, everybody was working remotely, and everybody was using Zoom. All of a sudden, like we had Zoom, but it wasn't getting used so much. All of a sudden, everybody was using Zoom all day, and I think as a result of that, a lot of security researchers were hitting Zoom and Microsoft Teams and not Splunk, Slack, and
Yeah.
looking for vulnerabilities, because all these remote workers, there was so much more activity going on all these collaboration tools, right? And I think they found some vulnerabilities in Zoom. So it was important to us to be able to roll out patches for that third-party software right away as well, because especially on Zoom, where there's a lot of confidential company information being exchanged in finance meetings and things like that. We're a publicly traded company, so yes, all that information gets out there. But if you have that ahead of time, you're going to be doing insider trading and probably making a lot of money. So if
The
you're doing
Zoom
it
room.
right, yeah. So getting that updated was really critical to us, because of course we don't want to be the victim of somebody stealing confidential data and things like that. So especially with collaboration tools, but all third-party software in general, I think it's very rare that we find something that's not covered by Automox. We have a number of office workers that are using, like Microsoft Office tools, typical, which of course are in there. Maybe the only exception may be some of the engineers that are using really obscure development environments or things like that.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know,
we hear that a lot.
Right. That's really the only thing that we're maybe have to look into a little bit deeper. But for the most part, all the software is covered in there. We can get an accurate inventory of what's up to date, or push out updates if they're not being automatically updated and things like that. So that's critical for us from a security perspective.
No, I think that's awesome. And you brought up a really great point earlier on when you said, when COVID hit, so many companies who were never remote were, taking home their devices that they've always had in the office. And I think that it added a whole other layer and just, narrative to the patching world. So I'm glad that Automox has had the chance to, assist with companies like yourself and some of these other companies, like you said, who maybe never even leveraged Zoom, right? Because they were always sitting in a meeting room and it never was something they even had to think about.
Right. Yeah, it brought into perspective a whole bunch of security issues with remote work that may be totally unrelated to this, but all of a sudden you have people using their company laptop at home all
So
the time, instead
yeah,
of once in a while, which is always, there's a level of risk with that, right? Because people could potentially have a compromised home computer or
yeah,
things like that. And we can't, from my perspective, like, I'm an IT person. So my house, I have segmented networks. I have my work network, I have my kids network, I have my home network, but not everybody has that. And that's not something that is possible, at least for our team, to deploy at scale to all employees.
yeah, absolutely.
We can't manage that. I believe that in the financial industry, at least with executives, that's a requirement that the IT department maintains that for minimally for executives. But it's not something that we have the resources to do. Right.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And I think just training your employees, right, too, of what that even looks like to have a device at home for work and, how to even manage the updates. So,
right. But that actually kind of brings to mind something that we didn't mention. So, some of the other things I think we may talk a little bit more about this in the other session we're doing with the worklets, but the ability to deploy our CA, our certificates internally. We have our own CA where we sign software, or we sign the internal websites and things like that. The ability to easily deploy that. There's a number of worklets we're using internally that I think we're supposed to talk about in our other session. So I won't spoil that.
We're hinting
Yeah.
at it. Well,
Yeah.
that's perfect. Since we only have a few minutes left, we'll actually head into some questions from the attendees. So we talked a little bit about this in terms of what happened during the holidays, but Brent, if you'll just go into, it looks like when your team encountered Log4j, how quickly were you able to see devices affected and respond?
Okay, yeah. I can't remember if that came out in the morning or if it was at night when we first learned about that, but I do think that we had a worklet that was inventorying all of our systems that had that library for some piece of software on them within 24 hours. And I think we also had a worklet to deploy the initial patch, which was a configuration change, all within 24 hours. So we were like right on top of that, which was super exciting when I talked to some of my, like I said, my colleagues in the industry that work at other places, and they had a whole team of people working all night and day and for days on this stuff. So I guess that they hadn't heard about how easy this could be.
Yeah, yeah, you're like, I don't want to brag, but
yeah, no, I mean, I'm not saying it was easy. I mean, we worked too,
Yeah.
I don't remember if you all had a worklet immediately that day, or if we created our first one. I think we actually made one. So I mean, there was work that went into that, but compared to searching every machine for specific files and things, that would be something that we just couldn't do. I'd have to retrain the entire IT department to do this one thing for a week. And that's just not going to work.
That was not going to work in a day's time.
No.
Especially over the holidays. No, that's
Right.
great. Another question someone asked is, what third-party software works with Automox? So I can handle a portion of that question. And Brent, if you want to add anything, definitely feel free. I know you did quite a bit when talking about third-party titles, but we add new titles to our natively supported third-party software list consistently. I mean, I feel like personally, it's happening almost weekly. We're currently at, I believe, 228 supported third-party titles. And again, that list just continues to grow. Anything you want to add in terms of third-party usage?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned it earlier, but for the most part, for an office worker that's using Office and some other various well-known tools, I think from what I've seen, that's very well covered. It's the only things that maybe not is, I think we have some firmware engineers that are using some obscure development environment that was written by one guy in Romania or something, and nobody's ever heard of it before. I don't even know why they're using it. Things like that, is probably the only thing I actually haven't seen covered. When I wouldn't expect that either,
Sure. Yeah. And I'll just give a call out to from the Automox side. We, as from the customer success side of the house, we're always, welcoming any third-party applications that we don't currently support that customers would like to see us support, and we can send those over to the engineering team for them to take a look and vet out. So definitely wanted to call that out. But